Hey guys, thanks for checking out another Ramsay Rides video. So what you're looking at right now is some footage from a fat bike ride I did with my old man recently. I'm fairly new to fat biking myself as I just got into it last season. So what I'm going to talk to you about today are what were my preconceptions about fat biking before I tried it, and maybe some of the reasons I was hesitant about trying it, and then how those preconceptions fared against what I've learned about fat biking so far. I'm also going to share some fat biking tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. But before we get into all that, let's first have a look at what myself and my father were riding today.
Hey, Ramsay Rides Senior here. Out fat biking today with Junior, and I was riding a Specialized Fatboy, which is 26-inch wheels and 4.6 tires with a 1x11 drivetrain, SRAM NX. And which the young lad got me for Christmas 3 years ago, and it's been well appreciated, nicely used. And this Christmas he got me Dillinger 4.6 studded tires, which will go on next week, and which will allow me to ride way more this winter because it gets pretty icy in Ontario and that. So very nice bike. Everything stock right now except for those tires that'll go on next week. Gabe was riding my buddy Steve's Rocky Mountain Suzi Q, which is an interesting bike. The Q comes from, it's got a narrower Q factor than most bikes, which makes it nice to ride without the legs apart as much, the feet apart.
Want to explain what the Q factor is?
What's that?
What is a Q factor?
The Q factor is the width of the bottom bracket. So with it having a narrower Q factor, it rides, feels nicer, feels more natural.
Right, because your feet are closer together.
Yeah. Like your normal mountain bike. But because of that, or I think because of that, just the way the chain stays and the whole bottom back triangle is, the wheels are the tires are only 3.8. And but it's a 27.5 inch tire, a 10-inch wheel, and that. So it's a very nice bike. How did you find it?
It was good. You do feel like, especially when the snow wasn't groomed as nicely here, you don't really float over it as well. But it was nice having you in front for sometimes with the wider tires to pack it down a bit beforehand. Yeah. But it did feel good. I didn't feel like I was on like a plus bike or something like that. It felt like a fat bike still.
Yeah, and I think on a groom trail it'd be a real beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So and it as well has a NX 1x11 drivetrain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good ride.
Yeah. All right. Next time fat biking in Oka.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Some groom trails.
Okay, so the first reason I never really got into fat biking for a long time, despite having been mountain biking for over 15 years, is just because it didn't look all that exciting to me. From what I've seen, it looks like you never really get going that fast. It's not all that technical, and the challenging terrain that I love about mountain biking is just smoothed over by snow. I thought it would kind of feel like road or gravel biking. It would be good exercise, but not much more. So that's actually what finally pushed me to try it, is that I've been training for cross-country races all summer, and I need some way to stay in shape over the winter. This was before I discovered Zwift. I can talk about that in another video if you're interested. It's a really fun indoor training app that I've gotten really into this season. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to hear more about it in another video. But I digress. So anyways, I thought it would be good but potentially boring way to stay fit over the winter, but I was quite wrong. First of all, depending on where you ride and what the elevation situation is like, you can actually get going pretty fast. And when you're on loose, slippery snow, every hill feels twice as steep as it would in summer. And you feel like you're going twice as fast too, because despite having such massive tires, it's still pretty easy to lose traction and get out of control. It's actually really neat the way a very, tame green trail, if you will, in the summer, which might bore you to death, can actually transform into something quite technical and challenging in the winter with just the addition of a layer of snow. This was the first big surprise to me. So before I go too far into why it's technically challenging and fun, I realize a lot of people watching this video, due to maybe geography or other factors, have never even ridden a bike in the snow, let alone a fat bike. The best way I can describe what it feels like is like riding in thick mud, but let's say way better. So let's not kid ourselves. Riding in mud is fun, but we seldom do it for a plethora of reasons. It ruins the trails, it ruins our drivetrains, and both us and our bikes can end up disgustingly dirty. Yet due to the nature of bike races, we will undoubtedly find ourselves riding in mud at one point or another, and it's good to be prepared. Although until I started fat biking, I found I seldom was prepared for riding in mud, since I tried to avoid it when training at all costs. When I went fat biking for the first time, I tried to describe it to my friends as like riding in mud, but way better. It's not nearly as slow or grindy as riding in mud can be. Although this can vary, however, based on how well packed the snow at your local trails are. But like riding in mud, you still get that amazing feeling of being on the edge of losing traction all the time. This is a great way to practice technical climbs where you need to find the perfect position for your weight across the bike with the best cadence to pedal at in order to maintain traction while going uphill. This is an essential mountain bike skill that you seldom get to practice into the summer, but it's something you're almost always working on when fat biking. As for the way down, I find myself wanting to take most corners with my inside foot dragging on the ground, like a motocross or downhill racer, due to the ruts that form in the trail, the lack of grip, and the fact that there's not usually nice big berms. Because of this, I usually ride flat pedals when I fat bike, but it's also because I just don't have any warm clipless riding boots, so I ride in my regular winter boots. I think for me, anyways, riding flat pedals is a good idea because I tend to go down a lot when I'm fat biking. I have a lot more crashes on one of my typical fat bike rides than even on a day of riding downhill in the summer. I don't want to scare you though. If you ride a fat bike in a normal or conservative manner, you're not going to be crashing all the time, and you shouldn't be too intimidated to ride clipless. I just have a bit of an adrenaline addiction that I'm still working my way through. But the great thing about crashing when you fat bike is it hurts a lot less. Partly due to the fact that you're hopefully falling in soft and deep snow, and also that you'll be wearing a lot more layers of clothes than you normally ride in. And you're also much less likely to damage or even scratch your bike in the process, which is just an added plus. So in summary, I'd say I was extremely wrong in what I initially thought about fat biking. It's a complete blast. Not only is it a great way to stay in shape, but it's also immensely helpful in improving your technical riding skills. I think almost any rider would benefit from fat biking. It's also super neat to rediscover your favorite trails in the winter, as it will have an entirely new personality and be challenging in all new ways. So with that being said, here are some tips and tricks before you get into winter riding. The first one is just consider renting a bike. Depending on where you ride and how long the winter season is for you, it may just be more economical to rent a fat bike. This is what I do, partly because I also snowboard and I do a lot of other things in the winter, and because I live in a really tiny apartment and it's just way too full of bikes as it is, so I really don't have space for any more. Another thing to think about are studded tires. These are basically little metal studs that come out of your tires. You can never go wrong with them, but the thing is, studded tires can be crazy expensive, costing around $600 for a pair. If the trails you ride get a lot of traffic and are well groomed, you can usually get away pretty easily with regular fat bike tires and not notice a difference. But if the trails are less well ridden and get icy, definitely consider getting some spikes before you go down hard on an ice patch, as you'll wish you did beforehand. Dress warm. So this should go without saying, but I will anyways. I go for runs in the winter, and I don't wear a ton of layers because I'm really working up a sweat, and I thought the same logic would apply to fat biking. But what I failed to remember is that you're also moving a lot faster, so there's going to be even more wind chill and making it even colder. I really like to wear snowboard or downhill mountain bike goggles when I fat bike. I notice a lot of other people do as well. They help keep my face warm, and they also have a bit of a tint, which can help darken the scene, as the snow can be pretty blinding. Also, make sure you have really warm footwear, as your foot and your toe muscles don't really do as much work when cycling as they would, say, hiking or running. So they can get cold pretty quickly. Warm gloves are also a must. I wouldn't recommend mittens as they can make it very hard and even dangerous to operate your brakes and shifters. But there's a lot of great fat bike specific gloves that make for a pretty good compromise between warmth and still having finger dexterity. So I think that's about a wrap. If there's anything I didn't cover or if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll certainly respond. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more content like this, as I upload a new video every week.